They smiled, offered you wine, and asked where you were headed. But beneath the floorboards of Millbrook Inn, 43 men were already waiting for your company. In the highlands where Kentucky claws at the fog-drenched edge of Virginia, there once stood a timber and stone sanctuary known as Millbrook Inn, but calling it an inn would be too innocent. The structure, wooden, warm, weathered, was the carefully engineered web of something far older, colder, and hungrier. Travelers called it blessed, locals called it lucky, but none dared call it what it truly was, a house that fed on loneliness. It began with the death of Jeremiah Cunningham, patriarch and builder of this so-called refuge. His 4 daughters inherited not just his land, but his intelligence, his iron discipline, and perhaps something else, something buried deeper than the foundations of the inn. Margaret, the eldest, had the dead-eyed precision of a merchant who could sell coal to a chimney sweep. Catherine's voice could peel secrets from a man's soul. Sarah, whose hands smelled of mugwort and foxglove, mixed comfort with quiet, calculated death. And the youngest, Elizabeth, still had the softness of girlhood, which made her the most dangerous of all. By 1832, these 4 sisters had turned grief into enterprise. Their strategy was simple: offer travelers what the road had stolen from them: warmth, food, companionship. Love and men, weakened by the long silence of wilderness trails, fell into their arms like leaves into a grave. Thomas Kellerman was the first, a widower, a cattleman with gold in his pockets and death in his heart. He arrived in snow, shivering with grief and bourbon. Catherine sat by his fire, whispered memories into his mouth, and let him imagine that love had returned. He left the next morning with promises to write, but never made it beyond the pine line. They say a blacksmith's hammer broke the back of his skull. They say he never even screamed. The money they took from Kellerman would fund not just their survival, but something far more deliberate. Margaret, always pragmatic, calculated that murder was simply a different form of hospitality, one that came with higher profit margins. And so the sisters built what they called the list: men who traveled alone, men who wouldn't be missed, men whose hearts were already dying before their bodies were. The sisters simply helped speed things up. The caves came next. Natural hollows beneath the inn, known only to the Zimmer brothers' German immigrants who had come for work but found themselves managing disposal. Their loyalty wasn't bought. It was bound by fear, addiction, and secrets. By spring, the inn was a living machine. Guests fed its belly. Sarah fed their tea. Catherine fed their fantasies. Elizabeth watched every smile, every touch, every death. And still, the register filled. Still, the word spread: you must stay at Millbrook Inn, because even dying men crave the illusion of being loved. They didn't just kill to survive. They killed to perfect the art of killing. Millbrook Inn had become a crucible of refinement, where the sisters sharpened their roles like knives. Each death wasn't just a disappearance, it was a blueprint. They took notes, they evolved, and no one noticed because they never looked behind the curtain of charm. Sarah's garden was no longer just for stews and salves. It was a pharmacopoeia of death: foxglove to slow a heart, pokeweed to mimic fever, hemlock for the quick, mushroom extracts for the slow. Her concoctions were nearly invisible, leaving behind symptoms that frontier doctors would simply call bad luck. Margaret's ledgers hid more than expenses. She documented every target, their money, mood, family ties, or lack thereof. A system of risk assessment more advanced than most banks used. She was not driven by rage or hunger, but by pure, cold efficiency. And Catherine was the bait. Her beauty was not passive. It was weaponized. She could become devout for a preacher, bookish for a poet, grieving for a widower. She studied a man's silence the way a surgeon studies a wound. And when she touched his arm by the fire, when she poured one last glass of spiced rum, it wasn't seduction. It was ritual. But perhaps the most terrifying role belonged to Elizabeth. Still just a girl in the eyes of many, her innocence disarmed suspicion. Guests would confess their entire life stories to her while laughing over supper. She asked questions, seemingly simple ones, that revealed travel plans, financial details, and next of kin. And no one thought twice. Together, they were a machine. An enterprise masked as empathy. A slaughterhouse dressed in gingham and lace. They didn't murder every month. That would draw attention. But every few seasons, when the snow had melted or the harvest came in, another man would fail to reach his destination. And no one could trace it back, because Millbrook was too beloved, too kind. If you've made it this far, you're not just a listener. You're part of something darker now. Type "The Inn Knows Me" twice in the comments if you feel that shift inside you, if you're ready to see behind the mask. And if this tale grips you like the cold grip of the Appalachian fog, hit like, share it with the fearless, and subscribe for what comes next. Because this next part, it changes everything. In 1847, they got greedy. Samuel Hartwell arrived with more gold than any guest before. A cotton broker, widowed, well-dressed, and deeply alone. He came looking for a bed. Catherine gave him dreams. Sarah gave him wine. Elizabeth listened like a daughter. Margaret took notes. And when he was found dead in his bed, appearing to have died peacefully in his sleep, no one questioned it. Until he missed his meeting in Pittsburgh. Until someone with power started asking questions. Until the wrong man disappeared, and the cracks began to form in the floorboards. The first knock wasn't loud, just a firm rap at dawn, when the fog hadn't yet lifted from the trees. Sheriff Thomas Brennan stood on the porch, boots muddy, papers in hand. Margaret opened the door with her usual composure, but for the first time in years, she hesitated. Hartwell was different. Wealthy, yes. Alone, yes. But powerful men waited for him, and powerful men do not forget. At first, Brennan's questions were simple, just confirmation. Had Hartwell stayed here? When had he left? Margaret gave dates, showed the ledger. Ezra vouched. Elizabeth wept. It almost worked, almost, but patterns don't lie forever. Brennan noticed the gap. How many men passed through here and never passed anywhere else? He spoke to a blacksmith, a merchant. Each remembered something that didn't fit. A horse found wandering. A familiar face buying goods, long after they were supposed to be dead. Then came Klaus Zimmer, racked with guilt, crushed by the weight of his brother's poisoning. He broke, not fully, not clearly, but enough. He spoke of screams muffled by pawing, of shallow soil turned soft in the spring rains, of nights when laughter upstairs masked dragging sounds beneath the floor. Brennan returned with deputies, with warrants, with spades. The sisters didn't run. They believed the illusion would hold. They offered tea, apologies, silence. But the floorboards couldn't lie. Behind Sarah's herb garden, they found the first cash. Kellerman's pocket watch, Hartwell's ledger, buttons, boots, locks of hair tied with ribbon. And then the cave, hidden behind a false rockfall, sealed in earth that swallowed secrets like communion wafers. The air inside stank of old metal and judgment. The lanterns flickered, bones grinned. 43 sets, not scattered, arranged, filed, buried with intention, not shame. Some had crushed skulls, some had twisted necks. A few had no obvious injuries, only the telltale signs of toxins in bone and marrow. The sisters were arrested in silence. Margaret refused to speak. Catherine wept, though. No one could say if it was guilt or strategy. Sarah whispered names no one understood. Elizabeth cried like a child and claimed she was just a bystander. The trial lasted weeks. The verdicts took hours. All guilty, all condemned. On the morning of October 12, 1851, 3 nooses hung like pendulums of justice. Margaret died first cold as ever. Catherine and Sarah clutched hands until the drop. Elizabeth, spared by her youth and feigned innocence, would rot for 37 years behind stone bars, denying it all until the moment her lungs gave out. The inn was sold, then abandoned, then razed. The land was sold to miners, who found copper and more bones. The cave was sealed, and a marker placed simple words chiseled into granite. Here lie the unknown travelers. May death give what love betrayed, but the woods remember. Some say the scent of Sarah's poison still hangs on foggy mornings, that you can hear piano keys in the wind, echoing Elizabeth's laughter, that if you sleep too close to the old path, you'll dream of Catherine's eyes, watching, weighing, waiting, because Millbrook Inn was never just wood and stone. It was a mirror. And if you ever wonder how 4 women fooled a nation for 2 decades, look deeper into the places you think are safe. Sometimes the hand that offers you warmth is simply measuring your weight for the grave. If this story has unsettled something in you, let it stay broken. Let the fear live where it belongs, in the cracks between facts and truth. Share this tale with someone who believes evil only wears a man's face. Subscribe if you want to walk deeper into the woods. The forgotten rites will be waiting. See you in the next descent.